Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Game Junk Podcast, episode 142, recording on Monday, March 20th, 2023. My name is Frank.
My name is Sean.
And my name is Andrew.
And a bit of a departure for this week's episode. Following the conclusion of The Last of Us TV show on HBO, we joined the TV Junk Podcast with the gas man, Greg Gaspari himself, and we talked about the show for quite a while, 2 hours, getting into our detailed thoughts about the show. I replayed the game. I'll be comparing it to the game constantly. A beloved game, perhaps too beloved. And we will break down the show. So how did you guys think it went? We already recorded. It's done.
In the bag.
Yeah, it was good. I had a lot of stuff to say, surprisingly. I wasn't sure if we would, but we did.
I would rate the discussion a 5 out of 5.
It's a pretty good rating.
Yeah.
Higher than the show. Maybe.
Oh, spoiler. What?
Maybe. But yeah, it's going to follow right after this intro. That's the episode this week. A little bit delayed. It took us some time. We didn't do a regular show. So when this posts, that's the episode. The next episode coming up, unless there's some major news, we'll probably be discussing, at least at some level, the RE4 remake, which is coming out this weekend. And that's about it. I hope you enjoy it. Share your thoughts on The Last of Us show if you're watching on youtube.com/GameJunk, or if you're listening to it, hop on to that YouTube and make put some comments as well, and we'll check them out. Anyway, hope you like it. Check out other episodes of the TV Junk Podcast if you enjoy it. For some other shows that we've all been on, some of them except for Andrew. This was Andrew's first, so give it a listen, will you? All right, we'll see you back with more hot game action in a week or so. Later.
Spoilers.
Hey, it's episode 16 of the TV Junk Podcast, and this is The Last of Us. My name is Greg. Thanks for checking out the pod. You can follow us on Twitter, TV Junk Podcast, or you can reach out tvjunkpodcast@gmail.com. On the show today, we have what some might call the greatest union in entertainment. Not since October 3rd, 1987, Saturday night's main event, and the immortal Hulk Hogan joined forces with the Macho Man, Randy Savage, to form the Mega Powers, has a union as majestic ever come together. Yes, you guessed it. TV Junk and Game Junk have joined forces for a special event. We've got Sean, we've got Frank, and making his debut on this podcast, it's Andrew. Fellas, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Sure.
Looking forward to it.
I'm sure you're familiar with Saturday night's main event and the Mega Powers.
How could you not?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, Sean, I mean, obviously you're Mean Gene Okerlund. Frank, you're Elizabeth. I'm the Macho Man, and Andrew is obviously Hulk Hogan, right?
Obviously. Of course. I'm huge. How could you mistake us?
I mean, it makes perfect sense. So,
put a hat and sunglasses on Hawk, you might be Macho Man material.
Just need to grow my hair a little longer, you know?
I could grow mine out and do like the Hogan horseshoe.
oh,
yeah.
you could do that mustache, the Fu Manchu for sure.
Sean could do that for sure.
Yeah. So, video games. I know nothing about video games after NHL 97 on the Sega Genesis. That was the last game system I owned and the last game that I think I actually ever played regularly. A pretty important game because it's the only hockey game, I believe, that has Wayne Gretzky on the St. Louis Blues.
Really?
Yeah.
Could be.
But so what better group to talk about a TV show adapted from a video game than you guys? So someone tell me about this, the video game, The Last of Us. What's your history with the actual game? Frank, you played this?
I have played The Last of Us many times. It's made by my favorite video game developer of all time, Naughty Dog. And I'd say many people would say it's the best video game ever made. I don't it's a unanimous thing, but it would get a lot of votes. We debated it as part of our best games ever. And I think undoubtedly people would say it's one of the landmark games in terms of storytelling and performance. It's kind of changed the games industry. I think it was Uncharted and many other games led up to it, but this seemed to be a turning point for story-driven games and what's demanded of performance and writing, at least going forward. Not that they all live up to The Last of Us, and in terms of the game, I like the story. I love a lot of things about it, but it's mostly the combat and the economies and crafting that I think make the game great, and pacing. So a lot of people say they love the story, they cry because of the story. I certainly do not have emotional responses to the story. I think it's very good, but I think it is ultimately a great game. And going into the show, it's how do these two things compare? I replayed the game last week, beginning to end, 100% platinum, PS5 version, The Last of Us Part 1, because when I was watching the show, I was like, people are telling me this is exactly like how it is in the game. I'm like, I don't remember it being exactly like that. So I had to know. I had to know the differences, and really that's the perspective we're bringing. And I think it's good that Greg is bringing the perspective, someone who has no context for the game, because I think it's hard to evaluate the show if you've played the game especially many times like I have.
Andrew, I'm assuming you played the game as well.
Yeah, I haven't played it recently, but I have played it, I think, through twice. And I did actually recently play an expansion pack called Left Behind. I didn't beat it. I know Sean did. But that expansion episode, they call it, was, I believe, episode 7, based around episode 7. So there was also some of that in it. And so it brought me right back into the world. I was amazed at, how good these games are and how good, they were able to adapt them, to put a little spoiler in front of the show. But yeah, so I have lots of experience with the games. There's actually 2 video games, since Greg, you know nothing. There's also a Part 2 Last of Us. So there is more content that could be tapped for this TV series in the future.
It will be tapped. It will be drained. Any
absolutely
hint of a storyline will be extrapolated. They will turn this into as many seasons as possible.
They will Game of Thrones it. They will basically write the story for them.
They will squeeze every last drop of content out of this game franchise.
Sean, would you say the combat in the Last of Us game would that be on par with, say, Double Dragon?
I mean,
which is probably the last combat game I've ever played.
It's up there. I mean, don't get me wrong. It is good. I mean, I will differ from Frank and say I thought the story was great in the game. But we've seen a lot of kind of not great adaptations of video games, and a lot of times it's because people say, there's not actually a lot of meat to the bone, or not a lot of meat to the actual story of a video game. This one has some meat, so it was interesting to see, what they did with it. And I think for the most part, there was stuff there to work with.
And just to clarify what I was saying, I don't think any video game stories are that good. But as far as video game stories go, Last of Us is one of the best, if not the best. It would be close for me. That, God of War, maybe Final Fantasy VII. But I think what makes it great, and all video game stories great for the most part, is awesome characters, and like the performances are a big part of that in the video game.
And just to bring it back to the game we should be talking about, Double Dragon, there are definitely Double Dragon-esque moments in the game where you have to mash the button like crazy. Let's not be, it's a great comparison. Good job, Greg.
Well, I'd go even further. The idea, I don't know what the first game that did this, but I believe it's in Double Dragon. The idea of picking up weapons along the way, the player choice as to whether to have a weapon or not. That's a big part of combat in The Last of Us, using bricks and bottles and deciding how to approach combat situations. It all goes back to Double Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
And Mortal
Unbelievable.
Kombat, the logo of Mortal Kombat and Mortal Kombat 2 featured in The Last of Us is also inspired by Double Dragon.
Well,
Right.
I think we solved it. I think we figured out why The Last of Us was so successful as a video game, and maybe we'll figure out why it is or not successful as a television show. So it's an HBO show created and written by Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann, starring Pedro Pascal, Bella Ramsey. It's a story that's set in 2023, 20 years into a pandemic caused by a mass fungal infection, which forces its host to transform into zombie-like creatures, or I prefer to call them mushroom monsters, and it just collapses society. So, I mean, yeah, there aren't really a lot of regular characters. The story is essentially about Joel and Ellie. But Sean, give me your overall thoughts on the show. 9 episodes.
9 episodes. Yeah. I mean, I really liked it. I thought, for the most part, it was quite well done. I do think, not to jump too far ahead, because I'm sure we're going to get more in detail about the ending in particular, but I really like the ending in the game, and it was very impactful in the game. I do think that final episode was a bit rushed in the show. So it didn't land as hard in the show. And, again, I'm sure we're going to talk about this, but just having played the game, knowing a lot of the beats, some of that stuff, doesn't land as well. But I think, playing the game, you spend a lot more time, right? Like basically they take all the cutscenes and the actual story and dialogue and stuff and make 9 episodes of TV. But when you're playing the game, there's 20 hours of combat and stuff in between where you are spending with these characters. So there's a bit more of a relationship built up, I think. But yeah, I thought, it is definitely one of the best, if not the best video game adaptations. But, granted, I think they just had a lot of good stuff to work with to begin with. And a few minor nitpicks and stuff, but I really liked it.
Better than the Double Dragon movie, Sean?
Hey, I like the Double Dragon movie just fine. Thank you very much.
Frank, thoughts on the show? First of all, how long does it take to complete the game, The Last of Us?
On a rushed playthrough, I think you could do it in probably 10 or 11 hours to do a completion. And because survival and crafting and finding things is a big part of the game. I look everywhere. I find everything. Even though I've played the game 10 times, I still play it that way. It takes me more 15 hours.
And would you do that in one sitting?
No. That one took me a few. But I think the first time I beat the game, I probably beat it over the course of 2 or 3 days.
That's impressive.
And I have beaten it in a day when I was trying to get some trophies before, where I just burned through it again. And
trophies? What do you mean trophies?
They're fictitious digital rewards for accomplishing tasks in video games that, while meaningless to most, drive every decision in my life.
Well, all right. I think
let's Huck go next.
You didn't even say anything. You didn't even say anything about the show, did you?
I know. I'll come back to me.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. My overall thoughts were I really liked it. I thought that, like Sean said, there were a few impactful moments that were not as impactful for me. And I really was struggling to figure out if it's because I know the game so well and I knew the story pretty much already. I recognized places when they got there. I knew what it was kind of before they really explained what it was in the TV show. And I wonder if that clouded my judgment a bit about my enjoyment of the show. I did still enjoy it, but I wonder if I didn't know those things, if it would have been more of a shock, more interesting, and that sort of thing about the show. But overall, really liked it. I must say, I was kind of surprised by the episode structure that they took and how they jumped around so much. But we can get into more detail later. But yeah, I liked it. I thought it was good.
All right, Frank. You're up.
I'm going to kind of echo what Huck said, where it's really tough for me to evaluate how much I like this show because I've played the game so many times and I find I'm just constantly comparing it to the game. By the end of the series, I was able to create a separation. And it is really hard for me to separate people saying it's the greatest show ever made. And like, I'm always going into the show like, are people really like, this is better than The Sopranos? This is better than The Wire? Even recent shows like Succession, which I like but don't love. I don't think it's better than that. But by the end of the series, I was able to get over some of my hesitations and biases with the show, and the new characters and new casting and new ideas ultimately won me over, and I liked the show. But I do find I'm split down the middle with a lot of stuff. Some things I like. I generally like new decisions by the show where they're like, let's expand on this idea more or cut out some things and get to the heart of an idea or condense ideas. I think all those decisions were really well done, including already dipping into stuff from The Last of Us Part 2 to kind of bridge the gap and make a little more sense, continuing from Part 1 to Part 2. But technically, I think the show is kind of weak. And specifically, I think the performances are average at best, almost across the board. The only two performances that are above average to me are the two leads, and it's not even that much. I think most of the lower tier cast, aside from I really like Murray Bartlett and Nick Offerman in episode 3. I think they're the two best performances in the show by far, and those I think it's a bit reflective of the production and the production design. I really don't like. Anytime the way they decorate sets, the way signs are written are like almost out of the video game. I've said this before. I feel like they use the video game as concept art and pre-production rather than actually doing that for the show. And it feels kind of cheap and inauthentic when I'm seeing signs, art by kids, drawings on walls. Anytime someone's painted a warning, it looks terrible. And also the makeup. I do not think the makeup is good. There's something off with the cordyceps and when it's a human running around with like just a mask on, it does not look good. It looks pretty bad. And it works in huge horde scenarios. Like episode 5 to me, best episode by far. It took a bunch of ideas, condensed them, elaborated. Best episode easily for me in the series. And when there's a bunch of the infected, it works. But when it's an individual one running around, it looks lame.
Yeah, I mean, I actually kind of agree with you on that. Like, I know you've brought up the production design stuff before on Film Junk and stuff. I don't have a problem with most of it, but that was the one thing that for some reason stuck out to me. The look of the clickers and even the bloater, like there's something about it that feels out of a video game, not out of this real world that they're trying to create. And I can't explain it. I like, maybe it's just, I know what it looks like in the game and it's like almost 1-to-1. It's like too exact.
I might go even further. I wouldn't be surprised if they took the models from the creatures and 3D printed them and made masks or something like that. Like it's so close to the game and it just feels off. It doesn't feel organic. And I would say that's a general theme. I know it's a video based on a video game, but the show feels artistically like a video game, which I don't think is a good thing. But I got over that stuff. Cinematography wise, I thought it was okay, but I will say I thought it was great whenever there was natural light, whenever it was lit with colored lights that is like clearly part of the production design. Wasn't crazy about it, but when they were outdoors, especially in the winter sections, I thought the show looked awesome. And I really liked when the production design diverted to have different locations, like when Joel is hurt in the house rather than, establishing where that house is and grounding it in a reality of abandoned houses. Decisions like that worked really well. But overall, as first 2 episodes, I'm like, I'm going to just have to shit on this show. I did not end up there. I really liked it by the end. And the one thing that holds up 100% from the game, I've said this before too, the soundtrack by, I know I'm going to pronounce his name wrong.
Gustavo
Santaolalla, Lala, who had done the music for Brokeback Mountain and some other movies. And it's the exact same music from the game. The best. 100% amazing. End credits song, which they use earlier in the show. One of the best songs, if not the best song ever written for a video game.
Wow.
Did you guys watch the making of 30-minute documentary thing?
I did not.
No.
So, and you're shaking your head, Sean. You watched it?
Yeah.
So like they used way more CG than I thought they did. I thought this, and I agree that there were some sets that where I was like, something's not quite right here. And it's because of the sheer amount of CG. Like every shot basically has a ton of environment CG overlaid on top of it, which I was actually pretty shocked to see. But it makes sense after looking back at it and seeing how dense the scenes are with just stuff everywhere around. And yeah, it definitely gives that feel of like something's a little artificial.
Can I add one thing? I just want to double check. If I'm embarrassed, I'm sorry. The giraffe's real, right?
Yes, it is real.
Yeah.
The one thing that needed to be real was real. And that was,
Yeah, a lot of people did think it was CG, apparently.
I was double check. I was like, is it real? Is it not real? It was hard to tell. And when you watch the making of, it'll explain why, because basically the giraffe and the 2 characters were the only thing in the scene that were CG. So obviously it was really hard to match the lighting properly with the environment, because also the background behind the giraffe almost looks so blown out. And I was like, something's not right here at all. And they basically didn't have anything except the giraffe and the characters.
Yeah, that's what I assumed happened. And I'm like, the whole scene looked kind of fake, but I was looking when the leaves went in the mouth and they're petting the giraffe. I'm like, this has got to be real. And I am loving it. The definitive moment from the game did not undersell that moment in the show. Although it doesn't play as big in the when you're not killing things constantly for 12 hours and then you pet a giraffe, it's not as impactful, which is the context for the game. But I want to know what Greg thought about this show as someone who hasn't played the game 10 times.
I quite enjoyed it. Like the whole zombie genre is pretty tiresome to me. So I thought this was a little more fresh, especially the fact that there was like the fungus and the whole mushroom thing and the stuff coming out of the mouse. I thought that was really cool, and it was different than any other stuff that is on television or in films. I thought the majority of the performances were pretty good. I thought the chemistry between Joel and Ellie was good. I kind of liked that. I am curious about how you felt about the casting of the main 2 characters. I don't know what the video game characters look like or what the ages are, but is it decent or subpar?
Well, I mean, I'll say I liked it. I think, and I feel like Frank mentioned this too, but like Bella Ramsey took a little while to grow on me, just because I wasn't quite sure why, but I think when I did go back and play the Left Behind DLC, I was kind of reminded, like Ellie in the video game, I don't know age wise, but I feel like she feels a bit younger.
I think she's supposed to be 14.
Yeah. She feels a little more innocent, whereas like Bella Ramsey right off the bat is like swearing, and she's just very like, she has this sharp edge to her, which, you know, I think is kind of makes sense for her character and what she's been through and all that kind of stuff. But it just, something about that was like, you know, it just felt like trying a little too hard, I guess. But I mean, she won me over. But that was kind of the main thing that I was a little bit struggling with. But I thought Pedro Pascal was great. And yeah, I think the chemistry between them was solid.
Yeah, I'm pretty much exactly where Sean was, where Bella Ramsey, the first 2 episodes, I'm like, I don't know, I'm not sold. By the end, I was definitely sold. Part of it's writing. I don't know if they filmed the show in order, but I felt like Bella Ramsey was overacting a bit in the first couple episodes. And then I don't know if that was intentional. Like the character is much more defensive and starts to get relaxed with Joel, which is part of the game too. So their relationship forms, but by the end, I think it's settled into a nice chemistry. But if I'm being honest, I prefer Joel and Ellie in the game, and it pains me to say and give credit to Troy Baker, who's probably already angry that he lost the role of Joel, but I prefer that version of Joel and Ellie more. And it could be that I'm used to it, but I think it's better.
So I don't know if Greg knows, but this show features a bunch of the voice actors from the game in actual secondary character roles. So James, I think he was in the 8th episode. Yep. He was like the sidekick to the priest guy.
Is it Buddy Boy?
Boy.
He got Cleaver in the neck.
Yeah, so he is the voice actor for Joel in the game.
Okay.
Performance capture artist.
Oh, performance storyteller. And there was a couple others which I didn't know. Actually, I wrote them down. Let's see here. Marlene, whose performance I actually really liked, which you guys didn't mention. She is Marlene in the game. When she first came out, I was like, she looks exactly like the character in the game. And it turns out it's because it was the character in the game. And in the game, a lot of the times they do take the voice actor, as an inspiration for the character model. So she looks exactly like she does in the game. And then
not always, right? Like Joel in the game doesn't really look like Troy Baker.
Joel in the game looks very similar to Pedro Pascal.
Yes,
actually.
That's pretty close. Agree.
It's pretty close. Also, the psycho woman Kathleen, who ran, I think it was the Kansas City camp, her kind of like second in command guy is the voice of Tommy in the video game. And I think his name in the show is David. I think I had that written. No, not David. Perry. Perry was his character in the show. And then there was one other character.
Well, the big one's Ashley Johnson, who plays Ellie in the game from Growing Pains. Plays the mother in the show, which is not part of the game.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's one other one.
I thought the casting Ashley Johnson was pretty good because she actually shares looks with Bella Ramsey quite a bit.
I wonder if it was the other way. I wonder if they had always intended on Ashley Johnson being in the role, and maybe they cast Bella Ramsey because she was similar looking to Ashley Johnson. I wonder which way that went, or if there was even any connection at all.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I read a quick thing today, like just they auditioned a lot of people for Ellie, and I that's all I really read. So I assume it wasn't really based on I don't see the connection, to be honest, but maybe I'm missing something.
I think you're missing something.
Round face, perhaps.
I also like Frank, like you said, I liked a lot of the outdoor stuff. I think I read somewhere that a lot of it was filmed in Alberta.
Yeah.
So like the snow covered stuff, it made a lot of sense, and I thought it looked great. Now, how many of the characters that we meet? I mean, you mentioned Marlene is in the game, but how many of the characters that we meet throughout are in the actual video game? Like the majority of them?
I would say 85 to 90% are exact characters, or maybe a couple are amalgamations of other characters, but it's pretty close to the game in terms of plot structure, major characters, very similar.
Yeah, there was some stuff where I was watching, I was like, oh, they're changing some things. And then I kind of looked it up afterwards, or even like with the Left Behind DLC. I was like, no, this is pretty much exactly the game. I was like, wow, I couldn't believe it.
And for I'm assuming the zombie characters are like fast moving in the game. Like, do you prefer in like your entertainment? Do you prefer fast zombies or do you prefer slow zombies?
Fast, baby.
Fast all the way.
I mean,
Fast.
I don't know. Slow's the classic, but I feel like fast is the new modern kind of spin on it.
It's definitely more terrifying, fast zombies. And in the game makes them much harder to hit, so adds another level of tension there.
I would say fast in terms of this world anyway. The world is kind of hard to believe if it's slow moving zombies. Even
Right.
in the context of the show, they find spots. Oh, not a lot of infected out here. Oh yeah, why doesn't everyone live there then? Like I'm constantly asking questions when the video game. I'm like, whatever. I'm killing stuff. I don't care. When I'm watching the show, I'm like, this world, I'm not buying it. Kind of the same way I feel about A Quiet Place. If they're attracted to sound, or even in episode 5, they're like, oh, they all live underground in the tunnels and they don't come out of the tunnels. Hey, I got an idea. Let's build them a bunch of tunnels that they can live in, or like there's tunnels everywhere. It feels like there are solutions to these problems that I don't care about when I'm playing, but I do care about when I'm watching.
Frank, I think you might be one of the leaders of society if this shit ever actually happens.
Oh, just like A Quiet Place, set up some sound things that draw them to them and blow them up. Because the one thing A Quiet Place has going for it is the creatures are big and powerful. The zombies in the show are pretty easy to kill. I could come up with some plans to kill them all pretty quickly.
Wow. I'd be interested
Well,
in seeing some of your plans. Like I've been in your house, so I know you don't have like rooms dedicated to your plans, and I know you don't have like a bunker type space. Well, I'm assuming you don't have a bunker because
He doesn't share that.
Yeah, you might have a hidden room somewhere. So I don't know.
No, I just think if they are attracted to sound, I'm often wondering how people who live in this world aren't thinking about what I'm thinking about.
They've become desensitized. It's been 15 years or whatever.
And it works in a video game context because it's like part of the mechanics. You know, you step on a piece of glass, it attracts things. It works in a gameplay scenario. But yeah, I don't care that much. I don't get hung up on it, but there are definitely moments where I'm like, does this make sense in this imaginary world?
But I mean, just to be a bit fair, like you don't really see that many zombies in the show. You know what I mean? Like, and I actually kind of like that. Like, I could see that being something, big horror heads would be disappointed with, but it kind of makes sense because people kind of tend to know where the zombies are. They stay away from them. And it's only when it's like, oh, we got to escape this city and the only way out is through these tunnels. Like, okay, yeah, that's a good reason to maybe risk it. But yeah, for the most part, they are kind of.
But when you
around
see Colorado or even Bill and Frank, what they're like having that fence, they live 20 years pretty much, and they only get bothered once that we seem like it's a semi-livable situation that I'm wondering why society has come to a screeching halt.
Well, Frank, I can confidently say that of all the people that I know that I consider friends, no one that I know thinks the same way that you think about pretty much anything. So,
I'll take that as
know,
a compliment.
yeah, you
True
should.
original.
Yes. Well, so let's talk about some of the episodes. Like the first couple of episodes pretty much set the stage for everything. We get kind of like a brief history lesson at the beginning with John Hannah, like on a 60s or late 50s talk show. I really liked how they kind of introduced the idea of like the viral fungus infection not being able to be stopped. I liked how everybody was smoking on television in the scene, and then it kind of it jumps quite a bit to like 20 years later, with Joel in the quarantine zone, living in Boston, and kind of sets up his relationship with Tess. And then we're introduced to Marlene in the first episode as well, and we kind of discover that Joel is kind of like a smuggler I would say, and he can get things into the quarantine zone and get things out, and that's kind of how he ends up taking Ellie across this journey to get. I think they're going to the opposite side of the country because that's where they end up going. But as a setup, the first couple of episodes, I'm assuming it's similar to how the game sets up, and so how did you think they adapted that, Sean?
I think it was really good. But since we're talking about the cold open with the talk show, that is not in the video game, and I absolutely hate the cold open. It's like,
you hated that?
Oh, more than anything. I hated everything about it. It's like this desperate attempt to tie it into the pandemic and current events. I can make the connection between a zombie outbreak and the pandemic. Thank you. I do not need this talk show to do it for me. And I hated the writing and performances on that talk show. I think the game is a much better intro, and where the show goes immediately after with Joel's daughter and getting Buddy from Friday Night Lights back in as the neighbor. It should have just went straight to that. I hate the cold open.
Is it because it's not in the game?
No, I just think it's terribly done and lazy and lame.
One thing we didn't mention was that the way the infection spreads is different in the show than in the game. In the show, they imply that it's through food and through like just the fungus itself, whereas in the game, it's like an airborne thing that you can breathe in. So in the show, it's like fungus. They got, I think that one episode, they talk about it going through flour or sugar or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
And then they also have it where like the little tendril things come out and like, the kiss or whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas in the show, it's mostly in the game, it's mostly like an airborne, almost like bacteria, fungus.
Yeah, there's areas with spores, and they have to wear masks and stuff like that a lot more in the game.
So that's not in the show.
And I think that's the big reason why they changed it, was because they didn't want their main characters wearing masks the whole time, because Pedro Pascal has another show where he does that the whole time. But yeah, I think that's why the cold open, why they did that. They wanted to sort of establish right off the top, okay, this is our take on zombies, and it's a little different from the game as well, and just kind of establish that. And I thought that was a good choice. I actually like that. I mean, the cold open, I could take it or leave it. I thought it a good way to intro it, I guess. But
I always liked the game, starting with the game when it came out, the idea of like just a different take on zombies, right? Like the fungal thing rather than the traditional treatment. And I think that still works. It keeps the idea fresh. I just didn't like the execution. And in the first episode, the only thing I will say, it's solid. The intro to the game is solid. Everything works almost beat for beat. The only thing that's better in the game is escaping, like with Joel and Tommy at the beginning, because you're controlling it in the car and you're kind of doing the camera from Ellie's perspective. And it's a bit like, Children of Men, and you're just like seeing all this stuff play out, and you're kind of rotating around the back seat and seeing what's going on. That is like a much more effective way to take in that moment than the show.
Very immersive. Yeah, very immersive.
One of the best parts of the game.
So, Ellie is, like you said, Ellie. Ellie is in that, or are you talking Sarah?
Sarah. My bad.
Okay, all right. So do they ever use the words like pandemic or global pandemic in the game?
No.
Okay. See, now I understand why you didn't like it.
Yes, now you do.
I don't. I don't know. Like, do you really think that they tried to be that heavy-handed to tie it into what's going on?
Yeah, they say it's a pandemic. Pan meaning all, and like it's like, yeah, I'd say it's pretty heavy-handed.
All right, you convinced me. I don't like the opening anymore either.
And it's not that it's wrong. Like I don't like but I can make those connections myself, even replaying the game. I didn't need you to spell it out for me.
What about the cold open for episode 2, where they're in Jakarta in Indonesia, where they bring
in the game? I liked it a lot.
You like that more?
Yes.
But like it was. I thought that one was. I guess pretty shocking, because the the scientist, like her answer to solve the problem is to essentially just kill everybody and bomb the city. It was kind of shocking. I mean, like, yeah, I didn't really expect that, but I think it worked to really set the tone about how scientists really thought that this wasn't going to be something that they could stop. So I enjoyed that. But you like that, and Andrew, what did you think about the part in Indonesia?
I really liked it. The only thing I was confused about was exactly when that was taking place in the storyline. I don't know I don't know if I just missed like a little intro at the beginning that said the year that took place. I'm assuming it was kind of around the time that everything started happening. I wasn't sure if that was like supposed to be ground zero, or if that was.
They said it was 2 days before the full on outbreak.
Okay. I must have missed that part, but I really liked it, and I thought it was neat to give that little backstory of the where it came from. I don't think in the games they ever really talk about the origins of exactly where it comes from in this way. There's definitely no flashbacks in the game. It doesn't really do that. So it's all through environmental storytelling, if anything, in the game. So you don't really get this much interaction with a character in the past, which was neat. And I liked it. I thought it did a good job of explaining it, especially to people who haven't played the game, who might not have any idea of what's really going on yet. Obviously, you have in the first episode, you have that little teaser that Frank hates about the fungus, but then this kind of really sets the scale of the problem in a much more visible light.
Sean, what about you?
Yeah, I thought the first couple episodes were strong. I did think, as I was watching the first couple episodes, I was kind of thinking like, okay, there's a lot of new people watching this who haven't played the game. What are they thinking of it? And I did kind of wonder, like, is this really setting itself apart enough? Like, does this just feel like The Walking Dead or something? And I think it does a little bit at the beginning. And I think episode 3 obviously is a pretty unique episode, and I think that's where it starts to really set itself apart and show maybe what's a bit different about this. But yeah, no real complaints about the first 2 episodes. I think they were solid.
Since I said one part I think is better in the game than the show, I'll say one thing the show did better is the moment when they get captured, escaping the QZ, and the idea of the scanner to see who's testing positive or negative. Like using the light on that, like the whole character's face lights up with the green and the red, and the way they build the tension when they're going to test Ellie is way better in the show than it was in the game.
Frank, you mentioned how much you liked the music in the show. I think it was probably episode 2, I think, where I really started to notice the music and I really enjoyed the opening credits theme. But there's a lot of music plays a kind of a big role throughout the show. Like they talk about communicating between each other by playing certain songs on like a radio frequency to send messages that way. Like there's the music that's inside Bill and Frank's house, like the music that they listen to and the piano, and then the cassettes that are in the truck in the next episode, and like Joel talks about playing the guitar. So like music is a big theme throughout the entire series, which I really enjoyed, and there's a lot of use of popular music throughout the show that I thought was really good. There's a lot of television shows where they use music in it. Like I'll say Willow, for example, that's really, really bad. But in this, I thought a lot of the choices for songs that they used throughout all 9 episodes was really good. And Frank, I'm curious what you thought about that, because I know you like the score and how it came right from the game, and you're someone that is often very critical about the use of popular music in television shows, and I enjoy your takes on that. So I'm interested in what you thought about that.
In general, I liked it. I I can be more specific. I liked the first use of Never Let Me Down Again by Depeche Mode. Wasn't crazy about the second. But that kind of ties in with the game. It's actually skipping to The Last of Us Part 2 in a lot of ways, or drawing influence from that, because like, there's a big moment with Take On Me in the second part of the series. And I feel like it's, the whole second game is about her having learned how to play guitar from Joel, and they know that's coming. So I think it was a much bigger part of season 1 than it was in the original like game part 1. So I think incorporating that stuff is good, but in general, I liked it. I still like the original music from the game more than the use of popular music, but it didn't bother me.
Sean?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was well done. I didn't think, they kind of overused anything super obvious. But, it didn't make me, you just bringing this up did make me think, like, it's an interesting point. Like, why is music kind of so prevalent in this world? And I think maybe that's just, an interesting thing that would survive in a post-apocalyptic world better than movies, TV, like things where it's like, you need electronics, you need streaming, you need like music, people can just play it. You have cassette tapes lying around. Like it feels like something that is passed down a little bit easier.
Or you can just play an instrument and sing. Like,
yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's kind of cool.
What about you, Andrew?
I also thought it was really well done. I thought the non like pop music influences part, the score in general was really used subtly, but really contributed to like the emotions of each episode. And I thought it did a really good job. Like just the I can't remember what it's called, like the picking guitar. I can't remember what that type of guitar playing is called. Almost like a classical style of guitar playing, just really kind of infiltrates a lot of the score throughout the show and does a great job and really rings back true to the game. So I really enjoy, I felt like I was in the game because of the score a lot of the times, which I imagine you didn't have that experience necessarily because you've never played the game. So it's interesting that, to hear your side of it and how you kind of latched on more to the pop's choices, whereas I more latched on to the more subtle musical themes, I think, that were from the game.
In the in the first episode, we see some of the it's kind of the first time we see a lot of the zombies, and they look mostly like, for the most part, they're human, because this is kind of, we get a lot of like the original outbreak in the city when they're driving around in the truck, and we start seeing these creatures. But in the second episode is when we first get introduced to like the clickers, the ones that have like the big mushroom caps on the tops of their heads, and they kind of explain how they don't see very well, but they hear really well, and we see Ellie get bit again, and we kind of see her start to heal as well, and then Tess gets bit as well in the scene. Now, Frank, you said that the clickers, you didn't think that they looked very good at all, like because like the CGI, it wasn't really makeup or anything like that.
I thought there was makeup. Like,
oh, maybe there was.
It's almost all makeup. All makeup.
Yeah, like it just, like I said, it looks like a human with a mask on, and I get it. It's a TV show. They like, it's not a movie budget, but there was something about the movement of them as well that felt off. It just felt like someone running with a mask on. Like
yeah, I mean, they talk about that in the behind the scenes thing about, praising the performance actors who were doing all the movements and stuff. And yeah, but like something about it is a little overdone for me too.
That's funny.
I wouldn't be surprised if in the game they have like procedural animations that are additive on top that just add randomness and make it feel more unnatural that a human performer can't really capture.
I have the opposite take. I thought they did a pretty good job of capturing the like awkward twitchiness of them from the game. And I didn't think it was like too subtle or whatever. I thought it was pretty well done actually compared to you guys.
I don't know if they explained it in the show, but do they explain it in the game? Why they look so different? Is it just the mutation just continues after they've been infected, and that's what they become, or is it a different form of infection? Is it like the difference between oyster mushrooms and shiitake? Is like what's
It is a completely arbitrary idea for a game mechanic based on like sound rather than sight. So it's like they need a version that is triggered by sound, so they cover their eyes and they're more dangerous. They kill you the second they grab you, at least at the start of the game. So they're a more threatening version that are completely sound based. So it evolved out of the game mechanic. I'm sure there's some reason that like it targeted their head and like works its way into the.
It does have a base in some science though. Like it's based on that fungus thing that gets into ants and controls ants, and it actually like gets into their brainstem or something. So I think the idea is like it kind of goes into their head and then kind of like explodes out from there. Like you'll notice there's like little tendrils that like kind of come out. And I think the clickers are kind of like the grown up version of those tendrils that have now exploded kind of out everywhere and kind of taken over to the point where like the eyes are useless because the tendrils have kind of come out and blown away the guy's whole face.
Yeah,
So now they have to rely on.
I guess I would say it kind of makes sense. It is kind of arbitrary based on the game, but that would take us down the road of bloaters, which, well, why do bloaters exist in this? They're just big people that got infected. Like,
I thought even in the game, it was about how long they've been mutating for or something, right? Like if you get to some like hidden faraway place way underground, something's been evolving over time down there, and it's like going to be a bloater or a bigger creature as opposed to the ones on the surface. I thought that was kind of the I don't think they say that in the show, but I thought that was what they say in the game.
Maybe I would debate like the logistics of how many bloaters versus or the different types. And I think they talk about the lifespan of some of them and it taking place over 20 years in the show. I don't know if it all adds up. I don't care. For the record, I do not care.
It's a mini boss, Frank. Come on, just let it go.
I care even less during the game, but I also don't care during the show. It's a zombie TV show. I can go with it.
At the end of episode 2, Tess, after she's been bitten, she sacrifices herself so that Joel and Ellie can escape once the horde has, I believe it's a museum that they're in. And this is like she's been infected. So I guess that was why they didn't just pounce on her and kind of tear her apart. But we got like that. The first time we saw like a hot makeout session between the two of these things with the spores kind of going from mouth into the other mouth. Again,
yeah, I had a note about that. Like they always attack. This is the one time.
It was like a very sensual death. It was very strange, but maybe that's just what they did so they could do the slow motion of the lighter falling and starting the fire and exploding the museum. Is there like making out in the video game?
No. Not that I recall.
I don't even think there's that explosion, right? Is there an explosion in that game? I don't think so, right?
I feel like that scene plays out different in the game, but Frank's the expert. He just played it. He should know.
Oh, you don't remember? Oh, fair enough.
I think you shoot Tess, but I'm sure I'm embarrassing myself right now.
I thought you just leave her alone to like hold them off while you escape, and she like tries to shoot whole bunch dead, and then yeah, it's been a while.
It hasn't been a while for me, and I still don't know.
There are currently people screaming in their cars, yelling out what exactly happens in the game and just thinking terrible thoughts about you, Frank.
That's okay. Whether it's the game or the show, I'm here to advocate for one thing. Let us end Last of Us preciousness. It's a zombie game. It's a zombie TV show. Let's relax. You can like it all you want. It is not the most important thing that's ever happened in the history of entertainment.
Man, they are going to come for you.
I've been
It
saying
is the greatest game
show.
of all time, but aside from that, relax.
Exactly.
And this leads us to the first of a couple of the 9 episodes where it doesn't really feature a lot of the main characters. I'm not even sure if Ellie's even in episode 3 at all, or maybe she's right at the beginning or at the at the very end.
There's bookends.
That's right, the bookends. So we meet Bill and Frank. Bill is played by, oh my god, what's his name?
Nick Offerman.
Nick Offerman, yes. Essentially playing an amped up version of his character from Parks and Rec, essentially. And he's like I want to say like almost like a tinfoil hat wearing type person. He has the bunker, like he has the Frank bunker, right?
The names are wrong. Bill has the bunker, not Frank.
Right. And he has all the hidden cameras, and he watches the town get evacuated to safety. And I say safety in quotes because we found out later what actually happened to all of the townspeople. They were actually mostly innocent, and they were all executed by the army. So he ends up being the only person that's left in his town. And so we get the montage of him setting up all his traps and going through store to store and taking everything he wants, and kind of just essentially setting himself up to live in this town all by himself in this house. And then another person by the name of Frank approaches, and he reluctantly lets him in, and they fall in love, and we get like this really nice episode away from like the zombies and the terror and the death that we see in the first 2 episodes of this relationship between Bill and Frank. And I think it's I don't know if it was my favorite episode of the series, but I think it might be arguably the best episode, or the best acted and the best written episode. We get kind of like the whole story of these two as they live their 20 some odd years together in this house. Andrew, what did you think of the episode? This was kind of like the first break we've had from the chaos of the first 2.
Yeah. So at the start of this episode, I guess when it kind of switched over to Bill, I was kind of like, what the heck's going on in this episode? Like, what is this doing? And this is when I started to realize that they started to structure this show a lot like Lost, except you don't have any recurring characters. You kind of just have like these one-off characters where you have like episodes about. And I think it works pretty well. The only thing that I had trouble with this episode was I was always super tense. And I thought for sure something was going to happen all the time, and it never really did. Like, I thought when the piano scene, like, great scene, he's playing the piano. I can't remember, not Bill. What's the other guy's name? Frank? Frank's playing the piano, and Bill's like, don't play that song. Don't play that or whatever. And then Bill starts to play the piano. I'm like, Frank is going to do him in here and take his house. Like, it's the end for Bill. You're an idiot. Like, the whole time I'm super tense thinking like, this is the end for you, Bill. Like, you built this great compound. You're just going to give it over to this asshole that just stumbled into your house. You idiot. Right. And it never happened, obviously. But that was like, I just found myself so tense the whole time that these guys, first I thought Bill was going to get it for Frank. Then I thought, the both of them were going to get it because they were, getting too lazy with their, defense or whatever around the encampment. And it never really came to that until like kind of the end. But yeah, I enjoyed this episode, though it was definitely long, like the longest episode, I think, by far, right? Like, most episodes were around 40 to 50 minutes. This one was over an hour.
I think this and episode 1 are both about an hour and 20 minutes.
Okay. So, I mean, I liked it, but at this early in the show, I kind of was a little confused as to why we were leaving the main characters for so long, so early. In hindsight, I liked it a lot, but while I was watching it the first time, I kind of was frustrated with like, why aren't we seeing what Joel and Ellie are doing? And I kind of felt like a lot of these kind of side episodes took away from the relationship building of Joel and Ellie that you get way more of in the game. I think Sean mentioned it. You just spend so much more time with Joel and Ellie. You get to know them better. Whereas this spends a lot more time on these kind of like throwaway characters that I think are, good side stories about the world, but don't really like tell the story that I wanted to see of Joel and Ellie going through the world.
Frank?
Yeah, I like the episode a lot. I guess it's probably because it's the first time we're getting away from the game in some respects, and it's doing its own thing. Now, Bill and Frank were characters in the game. You actually meet up with Bill in the game, so how he dies in this is not the same as the game. So that's a departure, but it alludes to their relationship through letters, and the scene with the magazine is in the game as well. But so the breadcrumbs are there in the game, but this was like, well, let's fill out this story. And I liked it because I think it's got the two best performances. And I really like the idea of Bill's character, like living a life in an apocalyptic world that he couldn't live in the regular world. And just that core conceit is really good. I think it actually could have leaned into it a bit more. But I thought that was a really unique idea of like something that could happen that isn't in the game that I don't remember seeing in anything that's a zombie apocalypse or anything like that. Like, and I like the core idea of the show, or the episode, I should say, and the two leads. I really like Murray Bartlett in the first season of White Lotus. So I thought that was pretty good.
Sean, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great episode. I mean, I think performances are great. A lot of people calling it one of the best episodes of TV of all time. I mean, that's maybe going a little crazy, but like, I think I said this on Film Junk. I mean, it's a nice self-contained story. I think that's part of the reason why it really works for people.
Agreed.
But yeah, I really like that idea of like, you're living alone. You've found this way to survive. And now somebody comes along and it's like, how do you let someone into your life, and how careful do you have to be? And it's like Andrew said, like you're pretty tense throughout the episode and you're waiting for something bad to happen. And it's kind of interesting that thing you think is going to happen isn't really what happens. But yeah, I think the other thing I really liked about this episode, it kind of reminded me one of the things that I thought was special about the game, which is that it wasn't afraid to just have quiet moments, which, the show isn't afraid to do that either. It's not quite as unique in a TV show, but like in a video game, it's very unique because video games are just all about action all the time. So like having quiet moments where you're just, exploring nature and talking, that doesn't happen. I mean, it's starting to happen more, but yeah, that kind of just reminded me of that's one of the great things about The Last of Us, and I think they captured it well in this episode.
People are calling this one of the greatest episodes of television in history.
Oh yeah.
I don't think these people have seen a specific episode from the original Night Court series where they have to get through like 100 cases in one night, and it's just zany characters after zany characters. That is quality entertainment. So the next two episodes are kind of grouped together, and we get a little bit of a story told where we meet Kathleen, who Andrew, you mentioned earlier, and she's kind of the leader of this group of people who are in Kansas City, and they were citizens who kind of overthrew Fedra, like the government organization that was kind of controlling everything, where, in Boston, they had Joel escaped from them, whereas in Kansas City, like the people rose and kind of took over. And in the flashback scene where they were taking out the Fedra agents, very disturbing because they were very brutal in killing these soldiers in horrible ways. But so Joel and Ellie end up having to take a detour through Kansas City, and they kind of get ambushed, and we see more of Joel's brutal, the way he can kill people without really even thinking of it, and we see more of that. And this is also the first time where we see Ellie do some damage, because Joel's getting choked out on the ground, and Ellie comes out from her hiding place and shoots this young boy in the back. And that's kind of the first time she has really shown any kind of violence in the series. And, that kind of starts her character in a little bit of a different way, where she seems to be more at ease of, being able to defend herself and do what needs to be done to survive. But so like the whole story of Kathleen, like she's in the game, I'm assuming.
No,
she's not in the game.
That's like I'd say she's the biggest major character that is not in the game.
Okay.
But isn't there a character that's kind of like her though? Like isn't it kind of like an amalgamation? Is that what you were talking about when you're talking about amalgamations?
No. From what I remember, the Sam and Henry, you run into them and you join forces and try to escape through the tunnels. The whole added element is why Henry is wanted, and I'm pretty sure all that stuff is new. If I'm wrong, I will sweat profusely after the fact.
Well, I'll take your word for it. I think you would probably know better than me.
I think that's the strength. Like, I actually think setting up this world for kind of like what Sean was saying about episode 3 being self-contained, these 2 episodes have a nice self-contained arc relating to that character and Sam and Henry and their motivations. And I just think these 2 episodes were my favorite in terms of adding to the game, making it feel more real, and like making the world feel a bit more real. I really liked it. Although this is probably a good time to point out, when I played the game and even during the show, I don't get Fedra, the Fireflies. They're called hunters in the game. I think they call them like just other people who live out in the world. Like, they're given names in the game for like different types of enemies that you fight. I never understood the motivations of Fedra and the Fireflies in the game. And I got to be honest, I still don't by the end of the show. It feels kind of arbitrary to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just, the idea of like some government group coming in and trying to control a city and lock it down and protect people. But in doing so, they obviously go too far and start, doing crazy things to enforce their laws. And then there's groups that are kind of underground resistance groups that are fighting back.
But in the game, the Fireflies, at least when I always played it, they felt like another set of enemies that you're worried about, right? Like, they never felt like you're on their side, where in the show, I get the sense like they're working together at some level, where, that definitely changes by the end of season 1 and the end of the first game. But again, the world and the factions, not that it's that big a deal. I don't get it. I don't get what the end goal of the Fireflies is.
I was under the impression that it was kind of just like another faction of organization other than Fedra that didn't want to live under Fedra control. And basically they set up like a mutual, like, an equivalent level of Fedra other places. And probably they clash every once in a while. That's like what Riley, or is it Riley? Yeah. Like
Riley gets recruited from Fedra to the Fireflies.
Yeah, and they're kind of like battling each other, right? Like, they're kind of like a opposite ends. Like, one is trying to oppress the other, and the other one just wants to kind of do their own thing and have their own sort of like, government-y type structure. It's almost like what the Kansas City like people did with Kathleen, except they didn't call themselves anything that I think they mentioned.
Yeah, I guess, it's just another version of that. I think it makes more sense in the show. I like I didn't love Melanie Lynskey as Kathleen. I like her in general. I didn't really buy the menacing leader idea, even as like a subversion type of casting. Something felt off about it. But those two episodes I really liked, and the climax, which is kind of taking some iconic set piece gameplay moments from the game and turning it into a nighttime scenario where all the hordes come out from underground and using the rifle to protect people. I thought the climax of episode 5 was fantastic, including the emotional moment where Sam gets bitten and how Ellie has to deal with that. I thought everything about these two episodes was better than the game.
So Henry and Sam, they are in the game, and they you see they go through the tunnels, and does that also lead to like that set piece? Is that in the game with all of the?
No, it's just you and them together. Pretty much the same outcome happens where they get infected, and Henry has to kill his brother, and like it plays out similarly, but the surrounding elements are at a way higher level in the show.
Okay. I totally forgot about that part from the game. Like I don't even remember that at all. So it's been a long time. I should go back and play it because totally forgot.
Does Henry like kill himself in the game like he does in the show?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Like I really enjoyed the Henry and Sam characters. I enjoyed how when Sam got bit, and then the next morning, Ellie woke up, and because Sam is deaf, and their whole thing is not being able to see well but can hear well, and she doesn't think that he's turned yet, and she puts her hand on his shoulder, and he turns and he starts attacking her. And I thought that was a really cool, tense, kind of a surprising, like almost like a jump scare moment in the show. But
I think it's worth noting Sam isn't deaf in the game.
Oh, okay. The large, like, giant mushroom monster that comes out of the ground. Like, first of all, I thought the effects on that looked really shitty. Like, I thought it was really bad. And like I legit laughed out loud because like it didn't make any sense to me that this giant thing like was it just like was it Andre the Giant like that got bit and then he's just like a big dude?
Yeah, it's just a big person that gets bit. The bloaters, it's a convention for the game to have an enemy, but I think it might have been a better decision to cut the bloaters from the show.
Yeah, because in the making of, they talk about how they had just a big guy in a suit, like they had like a 7-foot tall guy in a big bloater suit, and they wanted to do it practical, but then they said that the suit was so big and cumbersome that he couldn't really move very fast. And so they ended up taking out everything with that practical person and just did CG for the whole thing. And yes, it is faster. And, you can see, bigger efforts of strength or whatever to like pick up guys and throw them around. But yeah, it really did not come across very well for sure.
And, you said that the man that played Harry, he's the voice actor for Tommy
in the game. Yeah,
in the game,
and he looks a lot like Will Forte in the show.
Yes, he does. He got trounced by the large bloater, and then the Kathleen, she was taken out by like a child in the show. Are there a lot of like children mushroom creatures in the video game?
That's a no-no. That's a no-no in games. Can't kill kids.
Oh, okay. All right.
That's like an ESRB M rating for mature right there. Waiting to happen.
Oh, okay. So they can't even portray.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I wasn't even thinking about it from that ESRB perspective, but even just, I thought the show would explore types of things that could get infected more when it's a game. There's a budget cost to creating a model for, like, you have to reuse ideas. to make it feasible budget wise. But if you're just putting makeup on people, I thought they might explore, hey, what are different versions of infected or different types of people who get infected in this world, which they do a bit in the beginning. Like it's an elderly woman is the first person you see that gets infected, which I wish they did more of that. Like not elderly people getting infected, but like exploring different. I don't think that's explored that much in zombie stuff, like different types of people being infected.
I think The Walking Dead was probably one of the first to do that. On the show, they did have child zombies in the show, but I didn't like. I don't particularly like children to begin with, but like infected children are even worse, and then like monster mushroom children are kind of like the top of the list of things that I do not like. So I was rather terrified when that. It kind of like it also had like super jumping ability and which I didn't like either, but it was good to see the evil people get their comeuppance in that episode. And I like so like in the game, like are you Joel like with the rifle like shooting in
they're going through this whole scenario. It's during the daytime.
Okay.
And he approaches a sniper, and it's a long drawn out sequence of fighting enemies, getting to the sniper. Then you get to the sniper, and they're making their way through the yard when Fedra is oncoming in a tank, and you're protecting them with the sniper rifle. It's actually really good. The other really good part of the game that I cannot believe they didn't rip off for the show is when Joel is upside down and firing it at zombies. I cannot believe they didn't recreate that moment in the show, which is one of the best gameplay sequences in the game.
So, anybody else have anything to say about episodes 4 and 5 with that self-contained story?
Nope.
All right. So, like essentially the last 4 episodes are 3 months after this has happened, and this all kind of takes place really close together. It's kind of like the final adventure to get to the end of the first season. So Ellie and Joel encounter like these cowboys out as they're going through Wyoming, and then they're kind of taken to another like self-contained village or whatever, and this is when he's reunited with Tommy. Is this something from the game when they reconnect and they actually find each other?
Yes.
Okay.
Jackson,
sort of.
The place is in the game.
Okay.
Well, I don't think it is, right? He reunites with Tommy at the dam, which is a facility, not where they actually meet in this one is a huge city that ends up being the starting location for The Last of Us Part 2.
Oh, okay.
So
that's what I'm thinking. I'm confusing those two.
They turn those two ideas into one, which I think is a good choice.
So like the reunion is kind of nice, but it doesn't last too long because Joel does he have like health issues in the game? Because that was kind of a running thing that happens throughout the series, like with his hearing, and I think he might have like heart issues. I don't know if that's what they were portraying in the show or not, but he doesn't. None of that's in the game.
No, and I think it's the worst part of the show.
And they don't even really they don't really add anything to that. They kind of like imply something's going to happen, and then nothing ever does.
Yeah, like there was really no payoff other than
attack. Like he's kind of like. I at the end of the season, I don't know if it's a legit health concern or if he was just worried about Ellie. Like I don't think they handle it well at all.
No, yeah, go ahead, Sean.
Well, I was just going to say the one thing that is kind of interesting about it is like in the video game, the fact Joel's a bit older, like most video game protagonists, are like young, muscular, buff dudes. Like, the idea that they made Joel an older character was interesting for the game. And I think they maybe are trying to remind people of that a bit during the show. But I agree that I don't really understand what the actual implications were there.
Yeah, it feels like it's leading up to something in season 2, I guess, or I don't know.
Like he spent like the first 5 episodes and however long that period of time was, to find his brother, and then he really only sticks around for like a day or two, and then he's kind of off again. I was kind of surprised that kind of like happened so quickly. And it was in the middle of the season, and I guess that's just not where I thought it was going. But how did you feel about
show, though?
Pardon me?
So that's what happens in the game. It's a little different, where they get reunited, and then they get kind of, he tries to get Tommy to take her to the Fireflies, and they get invaded, and then it all just kind of, she takes off and it blows up from there. Like, she's upset that he wants to offer Tommy, and that's very similar to the game. Okay.
So then they leave Tommy, and they leave the protection. They head off towards the Fireflies, and that's when we first encountered this group of raiders that where Joel gets stabbed at the end of the episode. And that then we kind of get, I think the next episode is the majority of it is a self-contained story about Ellie and how she got to where she was kind of, I guess, enlisted in Fedra with her friend Riley, and Riley switches over to the Fireflies, and they kind of have one final evening together of fun, and they kind of go hang out in this mall. Now, I'm assuming that this is not in the game at all, or it isn't the game. Like, Ellie's backstory is.
It is DLC, so it was downloadable content released after the game. So it was a standalone episode that they did afterwards, and it's pretty solid. I've played through it a few times. It's more story based than gameplay based when you do it in the game. But I thought it was a good use of a standalone episode, and I think for the most part it improved it over the game. The order they go through the mall, and the arcade game stuff in the game, it's like imagining if the arcade would work. I kind of like that they actually just play Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, because I mean, I like, if I was 14 years old and I was left alone in a like a rundown mall where shit was still working, I think that would be pretty fun, especially going to the arcade. This is when they used the Aha song, which you mentioned earlier. They also used the song that I was kind of blown away that they used it. Like, Etta James did a what I thought was a little known cover of "I Got You, Babe," like the Sonny and Cher song, and I thought the use of that song in this seemed was really good. Like
just that is in the game as well.
Really? Oh, then I think that's even better that they use that.
I'm pretty sure.
And then they kind of they get into a bit of a fight because Riley says that this is it. She's gone the next day, and then they encounter one of the mushroom creatures, and they both get bit. And is that part of the downloadable character as well?
Yes.
Okay. And well, I mean, I got to know these things because I've never actually played the game. I'm really curious about how much they actually do take from the game into the show. I mean, I assume that they would take a lot of it because of how well liked the actual video game is. So I don't know why they wouldn't use as much as they possibly could in the show. So it's kind of like a little tragic story about how Ellie gets bit, and it's later on it's revealed that that's the first person that she actually killed was her best friend, which is kind of a sad thing to have to do, especially if you're a child. But overall, this episode, what did you guys think? Sean, what did you think about this episode?
Yeah, it was another great kind of standalone episode. I mean, obviously, zombies and malls, always a great mix. But yeah, I thought it was a fun episode, gives you a bit of backstory to Ellie. And, it was interesting because like some of these like one-off episodes, it might seem weird, like, especially if you don't know the games, you'd be like, why are we doing these flashbacks? Like we're just getting started on this show. Why are we, and like you were saying, Huck, like why detour off so early? But, part of it is really, I think it's kind of, if you just look at the story of the game, it's kind of short. So I feel like they did have to pad things out a bit. And luckily they had some of these other things to pull from. And I think they work for the most part. So I was a fan of this.
Andrew?
I liked it as well. I think they did a good job of sort of like showing how the characters were kind of like they're or Ellie in particular and Riley are at a weird age where they kind of remember what things were like before, but not really. So like a lot of this stuff that, a lot of people would take for granted are like really special, like the carousel and the arcade and stuff like that. The escalator. Exactly. Yeah. Perfect. So I thought it was really neat to showcase that. I mean, I think they had kind of already laid that out before this, but I think it really helped to reinforce how, I guess, isolated Ellie would have been kind of leading up to this from all of the, the modern day trappings that we live with and that the world would have had before the breakout. And it was kind of neat to see her just kind of like be a kid and just enjoy these like simple things in life that everyone takes for granted. So I really like this episode. Again, I was like, something's going to happen. Something's around the corner, even though I had just recently played we're going to start calling it downloadable character too. That's the best. Instead it's downloadable content.
Oh, okay.
Just for future
My bad.
reference, but yeah, I had just recently played through this section, so I kind of knew what was going to happen, but it was really like a fun callback. And again, it like even the set dressing in the show very closely matches what's in the game. So it's really like impressive how much, like Frank was saying, if they basically just use the game as concept art, and I'm pretty sure that's what they did. They probably took concept art directly from the game and just put it into the set. I mean, the set designer, whoever was working for the TV show, didn't have to use much imagination to really come up with what the look of everything was going to be. They basically just, had to produce the stuff to make it look like the game. But yeah, I really
ultimately to the detriment of the show.
Yeah, I really liked this episode though. I thought it was really good also.
Yeah, and the mall was actually a real mall that was scheduled for demolition. So they were able to kind of just do whatever they wanted with it, which is kind of cool.
In Canada, mostly there was an A&W in that food court.
Whoa.
Oh yeah.
Are you pissed I didn't go and visit and get a soda?
Might as well go for a soda, eh?
Andrew, you mentioned that they kind of were able to do things that would have been like insane for them to do, ride the escalator or play like a stand-up video game. Earlier on in the series, it's revealed that Ellie had never been in a car before, and like the idea of flying in an airplane seems like magical, but like I hired a seasonal employee at my store last year who had never used a rotary phone before. And, so it's when you kind of think about, certain ages of people who, never got to experience a lot of the stuff that we do, how crazy and magical some of the stuff might be. So I kind of really enjoyed how they were able to explore the mall, which is, I suppose something that we kind of do take for granted.
Speaking of that, my wife hired some people that have never seen the original Top Gun, and she was shocked and appalled.
I mean, like the fact that, some people have never been able to experience watching two guys play beach volleyball in jeans is upsetting.
It is,
because
totally.
Probably the worst thing you could wear on the beach.
Let's be honest. They've probably seen the clips on YouTube of that at least.
That's true. And then that kind of leads into the next episode. So like episode 6 is kind of, Joel gets stabbed, and then we get like his a little bit of his recovery in that episode 7, which is like the standalone mall episode, and then back into 8. Ellie has sewn the wound closed with a needle that she had found. So she takes it upon herself to go out and try to find some food, and actually shoots a deer. Doesn't kill it, and when she comes across the deer that she shot, we see 2 other people have stumbled across it as well. At the time, I don't think we know that this is the same group that Joel had stabbed one of these people. I can't remember if they had established that or not.
No.
They might have, but that kind of ties into that the previous episode. So she ends up trading the deer to get some penicillin to help Joel in his recovery. And they ended up just tracking her back because they wanted to get revenge on Joel, who had killed one of their people. So then we get to a pretty interesting episode with this preacher named David, who's who was a teacher before, but now he's almost gone insane, and it's like he has kidnapped Ellie, and it's revealed that he's been. This is another self-contained commune of people. This is like the 3rd or the 4th one that we've come across throughout the series. He's been feeding them like human people, and we see like beheaded corpses that are hanging like meat would hang in a meat locker. And he's attracted to this 14-year-old girl and kind of wants to start a family with her and kind of bring her into the fold. And he's clearly insane, and it's Ellie gets the opportunity to fight back and escape, and she kills the guy with the cleaver, and on the other side, Joel is taking out the people that have come to hunt him, and he becomes the hunter, and these 3 guys with the guns become the people that he is now hunting. It stabs one guy and then tortures quite ruthlessly to find out where Ellie is, and then kills these guys anyway. And it all comes up with this building being on fire, and Ellie's able to kill David and escape with Joel at the end. It's a lot of stuff happened in this episode, a lot of violence. Are any of these characters in the game at all?
This is almost exactly like the game.
Oh, this is almost exactly like the game. Okay.
This is one of the
big twists.
Yeah, I guess
in the gameplay.
Well, I think this is why this part is better in the game. It's your first time where you actually control Ellie, and it represents her coming of age, being on her own, taking care of Joel, flipping the script a bit, and you hunt you hunt the deer. It's part of the gameplay, and all of that to me is way better in the game. And the religious cult aspect is not part of they're creepy dudes. But it doesn't establish the backstory with the dinners and the cannibalism. At least I don't remember it being that heavy-handed, and I think it's better in the game. This one felt kind of goofy to me. I thought they were just effectively as creepy, and the idea of whether or not you could not trust or not trust them came across better in the game. I still liked the episode, but I prefer the treatment in the game more than this.
What do you think, Andrew?
Yeah, I think the same thing. The game, this is one of the first times I remember where I'm not playing as the main character anymore. I'm playing as the person I thought of as a secondary character, and now she has kind of become the primary character in the story. And it was also one of those times in the game where it kind of slows down, and you kind of have to hunt this deer for survival and stuff. And that it's pretty quick in the show. It it doesn't really have the levity, I think, that maybe they could have given it. This is like a young girl now trying to take care of a man who's critically injured and has to hunt and find food. And, I think they could have probably dragged it out a little longer to kind of add to the emotional impact of it. but I liked the episode. One thing I mentioned earlier, but the butcher guy, he was Joel, which we had mentioned before, but you could tell like he just wishes he had a bigger role in this show. Troy Baker.
When they killed him, he's got to be so pissed.
Yeah, I know.
Like the
I don't
insult
get to come back.
injury.
Yeah. And her calling him buddy boy, like that was the best.
I mean, I thought Troy Baker was okay. Like I didn't think
He was
like,
good.
yeah, I don't think he stuck out at all. Like I think if you didn't know it was him, you wouldn't think anything otherwise.
One thing to mention before you go on, Sean, Troy Baker, Greg, just so you know, is a very prolific voice actor in video games. He basically plays, I don't know, 90% of male characters in video games. Like in all big video games, he's everywhere. So he's just a very well-known personality in games.
Yeah. And I mean, I agree with what you guys are saying, and it kind of ties into the last episode for me too. Like, I think just this type, as we get to this point in the show, it's fine, it's good, but like, I think the game did do things better, and it was more impactful. It just like I forgot that this was where you take over as Ellie, but I mean, obviously, there's a turning point in both the game and the show where it's like they're trying to show that Ellie is becoming affected by the violence. She's having to kill people. Joel was protecting her before, and he was the one who had to brutally kill people, and she was kind of separated from it. But now it's taking over her as well. And I just think in the game, because there's more time and because you're actually doing the killing, like it kind of, you feel it a bit more.
Yeah, like you really you see a lot of rage in Ellie when she the second person she kills with a meat cleaver in the show, and she's just repeatedly hacking David in the face. I mean, fully deserved all the cleaver shots. But it was the first time we've seen like Ellie just completely lose it, and when she finally gets outside, like she doesn't even recognize Joel when
she doesn't even have any blood on her shirt.
Which was, I was kind of surprised. I kind of expected her to have like the crimson mask because
no kidding.
of all the blood that would have been flying in there. But Joel has to kind of shake her out of it before she realizes who he is, and you really get that sense of terror and like the survival instinct that kicked in for Ellie in the episode.
I have to say, this is a good time, like talking about how the violence and her finally really having to commit extreme violence. It's interesting how that played out for you, because there is an aspect of the coming from the games where I kind of take the violence for granted in the show. Like I kill stuff the whole time I'm playing the game. Like it's what I do the entire game. It just doesn't mean that much to me. It trivializes the violence, and I carry that into the show. I don't start to separate. Oh, now these are real people that are like living in committing terrible acts. It all just blends together, which probably makes the show much more enjoyable. Not having that kind of stuff.
Frank, are you able to tell the difference between video games and real life?
But not between video games and TV shows based on video games.
Okay.
I was going to say, unlike Frank, every time I killed in the game, I took it very seriously. It weighed on me, and I felt it.
Andrew, are you middle of the road in between those two?
No, I'm totally like, who's the real monsters? Is it us playing the game? Is it the humans in the game or in the show, or is it the monsters? Who is really the monsters in this world? We got to ask ourselves that.
They're just polygons with hitboxes on them. That's all I see. It's nothing.
So we get to the finale episode. I was really surprised. I think this is the shortest episode of the entire season. It's only about 40 some odd minutes long. And I was a little concerned that it was going to wrap up too quickly. And, we see this often. I've talked about a lot of times on other episodes of TV Junk when we do like the Marvel shows on Disney Plus, where we get like episode after episode where they're crafting this story, and then by the time they get to the finale, they have to wrap it up like inside of an hour, and sometimes it feels really rushed. And I felt that this episode felt very rushed. The climax happened so quickly, and it just went from like they finally get to where the Fireflies are to get Ellie to Marlene and try to take care of and save everybody, and like the episode just plays through the whole like the whole experience and the whole adventure in this final episode so quickly. I was like, when it was over, I was kind of stunned, and I don't feel that I was fulfilled as much as I wanted to be. Like, did you feel the same, that this was really a rushed ending?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just, like I said, I really like the ending, and I think the idea of, having to make that choice where, like, okay, Ellie can save humanity potentially, but it's going to kill her. And then Joel kind of selfishly deciding, well, fuck that, then humanity's going to suffer, and taking her back. Like, you don't see that very often. People sacrifice themselves for the greater good. And so to me, in the game, that was surprising. And I would think watching it in the show, it might be surprising, although you just don't have a lot of time to sit with that decision. And again, in the game, you are the one going through killing people to get back to Ellie. You have to pull the trigger to kill doctors that are like not even, combatants. And I think that plays into how you feel about it too. Like you see that Joel has kind of crossed the line, maybe. So
I believe it's optional to kill the doctors.
No, it's not. It's
No?
not. No, so in the game, you you sit there and you can hold the gun out, you aim the gun, but you can't do anything until you pull the trigger.
Oh, okay.
But it's on you.
I kill them every time.
Yeah, no. So like this is the big thing about the game, is that at that ending scene, you can sit there and almost contemplate your choice for as long as you want. Because I've sat there to see, in my video game analysis mode, how long can I sit here with this gun pointed at this doctor? And I sat there for like 5 minutes and nothing changed. I thought maybe something could. But you do have to actually make the choice as the player in the game. Whereas in this, I know I was upset as soon as they went to like the montage of killing, where they start playing the music. I'm like, why not just speed it up then and just like rush it even faster? Like, there was no tension at all of him trying to find Ellie. He basically is just like, okay, now I'm going to go into my killing montage and just wipe out this floor. No worry of getting, killed or anything. I'm Superman saving the girl. And it really like took away from the emotions of this final climax for me. And even that scene with the doctors, like, there's no hesitation at all. Whereas I think everyone who plays the game comes to that point and you're almost like shocked that you're going to have to blow away a doctor. And I would say everyone probably hesitates at that moment. I don't think, except Frank. Frank immediately pulls that trigger. He's like, fuck this doctor. You're not saving anyone else.
I'm pretty
But
sure
most
the
other-
first time I played it, I hesitated from that every point on. I'm like, let's. I thought you could not kill the second. There's 3 doctors in the room. I thought you could avoid.
Yeah, I think
killing-
you just have to kill the first one. Yeah. But I mean, that first
I killed the
decision
second too as
you
well,
do
just
have
so
to make. And it's a little, it's kind of shocking because you're kind of questioning it as you're playing the game. Like, do I actually want to save humanity here, or try to save humanity, or do I save Ellie? And then, you're kind of forced to make the decision, but you still are thinking about it while you're playing the game. Whereas in the show, it happens so quick. Like, he basically just walks up and boom, like, obviously he's made his decision, but I don't know if the watchers or the viewers have made their decision yet. And I feel like it's a little rushed. There's no sort of like mystery as to what he's going to choose. He just, immediately chooses and goes with it. So
Well, I guess hot take Frankie killing doctors is coming in, and I liked the brevity of the episode. I liked the montage. I liked that it got to the point. Maybe I was getting the episodes were a little long for me, and I felt like this is the point of this episode. This is what the show boils down to, or the game, I should say. It ends on this lie, and how like the moment is, does Ellie know that he's lying? Is she okay with it? It like leaves on this kind of interpretive moment of them, like where they're at in their relationship, trust, lack of trust, who knows? And I think like, let's just get to that point. And I was cool with how it played out. And I really liked the flashing back to killing Marlene, and the editing of this episode I actually really enjoyed.
Like he flat out murders everyone except for the two nurses, and then waits for Marlene to drop her gun and then shoots her in the stomach and then just executes her with a bullet to the head. And I think for me, the way I took it, like, yes, Joel lies to Ellie at the end, but I think throughout the series, she has become more aware, and I think she's more in tune of what's going on in Joel's mind, and I think she knows that he's lying to her, and I think you can see it in her face when she says okay, when she flat out asks him, and again he lies to her. That's what I took from it. I did enjoy how the episode ended. I'm assuming it's been picked up for a season 2.
Oh yeah.
And maybe even a season 3, who knows? But I did enjoy how it ended, but I would have liked a little more getting there. I think I didn't mind the non-hesitation with shooting the doctor. I mean, he did pick up a scalpel and approach Joel, and those things are pretty sharp. So a bullet to the head, I thought was
warranted.
Justified. But I don't know. Like, I guess like just the fact that they made the last episode, which had like the most important, climax of an episode, to be the shortest episode. I guess I was kind of surprised, but and it did feel rushed, but I did enjoy the ending, and I'm assuming that's how the game ends as well.
There's a little bit more of like a escape sequence at the end where you're actually like trying to get out with Ellie, whereas in the show it's kind of like, I'm just going to take the elevator down to the basement and hop in this car, and like that's it. There's not much tension of you being chased or anything like that, so it's a little less than the game, I would say.
But the actual exchange of him lying to her, and she asks, "Are you telling me the truth?" And he gives the answer, and she says, "Okay." And then it cuts to music. That is the exact same as the game. And that song is so good.
Ends on a banger.
So good.
All right. So like final thoughts on the series, Frank?
Good show. Definitely won me over by the end. Haven't played Last of Us Part 2 as much, so I might like the second season more, and I hope they change up more stuff. I'm fine with that. The more they change up, the more I like it. And I might play The Last of Us Part 1 again when it releases on PC next week.
Sean, final thoughts?
Yeah, I really liked it. Few minor things here and there that weren't the best. I agree. The finale was rushed, but I'm very interested what they do with. I think they said the game, the Last of Us Part 2 game will be adapted as 2 seasons, season 2 and 3, and that they are going to go in some different directions. So, I mean, yeah, it's a bit of a different game, but yeah, I'm real curious to see where they go with it.
Andrew?
I also liked it. I do think that that last episode was definitely rushed. I did like their kind of like tangent episodes where they fleshed out more of the stories. And I'm sure in season 2, they'll probably give it the full like 24 episode treatment instead of the 8 or whatever, the 9, just to flesh it out, and they'll ruin it like they do for so many other things. But overall, I am looking forward to season 2, though I think the content from the Last of Us game, the first game, is the strongest. So I don't have as high of hopes for the following seasons as this one, but overall really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm the same. I enjoyed it as well. And I think I enjoyed, after doing this and talking about it with you guys, I think I actually enjoyed the show a little bit more. Just because I like when like shows have, content to adapt from, and they adapt it well. I mentioned the Marvel shows before, and nothing annoys me more when they have 100 years of content in these comic books, and they change up shit for like the movies or the television shows when they don't necessarily need to, because it has worked for 100 years in the pages, so like this, it can work in television and film. So like I think I like the fact that they adapted a lot of this well, and some are winners and some are losers in what they adapted, but overall I enjoyed it, and I also learned what DLC means. So there you go.
Now I would ask, would you play this game now? Has it made you want to play a video game, a modern?
No.
What
I don't have the time or the patience, I think, to play anything.
What if there was a downloadable character and you could play Last of Us as Qbert? I
don't know.
Qbert
Or what if you could play as the Double Dragon characters?
Oh my God. Answer. Is there a big boss at the end of it?
There are bosses, but
yeah, you just watch the show. It's pretty much the same. So
yeah, I think
the doctor is the big boss.
Yeah, he's pretty menacing with that knife, that scalpel.
Do we give star ratings now or after the superlative?
No, we'll do the star ratings right now. Frank, out of 5.
3.5.
Sean?
I'm going to go 4.5.
Andrew?
I'm going to give it a 4.
I'm going to give it a pretty heavy 4 as well. Good show, and I would recommend people watching it. All right, it's time to hand out our superlatives. Some people's favorite part of the podcast. Some people stress over it way too much, but we like to have a little bit of fun. We'll start with our favorite secondary character. There's a lot of secondary characters to choose from. A lot of them only appear in one episode. But Sean, we'll start with you.
It was pretty easy for me. I went with Bill. I just, that episode is a great episode, and there's just, something about him and kind of his quiet way about things, but then having his life kind of shaken up and taking a risk. And I really liked it.
Frank?
I also have Nick Offerman as Bill, despite the bad wig and makeup in that episode.
Wig? What are you talking? Andrew?
I'm going to say Marlene. I really liked her performance. I thought it was great. I thought she played that same character in the show or in the game, and I really liked it. Marlene.
My favorite secondary characters it was a tie with Marlon and Florence. Marlon and Florence were played by Graham Greene and Elaine Miles, and they lived in the cabin in the middle of nowhere.
I like them too.
I thought that was one of my favorite scenes in the entire show. It was such a drastic change in tone, and I felt it was kind of needed. It was really the only little bit of humor outside of the book of dad jokes, which I don't really count as humor. Sean, you're a dad. Did you find the jokes funny?
I love puns.
And that
So
is
good.
also directly out of the game. There are
is it? Oh, okay.
We're hearing all of Ellie's jokes And it's as you're walking through the game at moments, she'll present you with like, hey, open up the book and tell a few jokes. And the comic book she finds is also a collectible. But I'm glad you brought up that scene. I thought it was really good as well. And that is not in the game.
Oh, perfect. I mean, I think we need Graham Greene to be in another version of the Last of Us game. Get that guy in there. He's a great actor. Okay, well, let's go into our recasting choices, and this time we'll start with Sean.
This one was a little tricky. I mean, my first thought, Troy Baker, recast him just because it would piss him off. But you know what? I have to be honest. I would say Anna Torv as Tess. Nothing wrong with her performance, but there was something about the look of her. I felt like they really had to ugly her up in some way. It just, something about it didn't sit right with me. So I am going with Linda Hamilton as Tess.
Good choice. Andrew?
So I didn't know we had to like pick another replacement actor or actress.
Oh, okay.
So I
That's
didn't
fine.
do that part, but mine was Ellie, actually. I still was not totally sold by Bella's. It's Bella, right? Bella Ramsey? Yeah.
Bella
I was
Ramsey,
not
yeah.
totally sold on her performance as Ellie. I thought she was a little older than I would have liked Ellie to be. So I would have liked to see someone a little younger. You know, maybe I guess I would throw in a young Dakota Fanning.
Nice.
What about Elliot Page? Like, isn't that who the character was originally based on?
I guess you could say that. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Frank?
Mine was Melanie Linsky, and not that I dislike her. I just, in the character in the show, I didn't think she was a great match. And apparently she was in Yellow Jackets, which I have not watched. Let's take someone else from that show. Let's get Juliette Lewis as Kathleen.
I would recast David, the rapist preacher cannibal.
It's not great.
I didn't think that Scott Shepard really brought it. We need someone a little more evil and twisted. And I thought Stephen Merchant from Hello Ladies would have been.
I thought for a second you were going to go Willem Dafoe on that one.
Did I miss something? Did the gimmick change?
Yeah,
last episode.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I missed the last.
Yeah.
He's zigging instead of zagging. I don't know.
Yeah. Andrew, for the first 14 episodes, I think, of the podcast, I recasted someone with Jim Parsons from Big Bang Theory, and it kind of became a running gag. And last episode, when we did Rings of Power, I switched to Stephen Merchant.
Okay. Now I'm in on the joke. Excellent.
Yes. And we'll go with our top 5 moments in the show, good or bad. Andrew, we'll start with you.
Okay, what do I go 5 to 1? I guess
Whatever you want.
in one go. Okay,
Yeah.
My number 5 was Ellie calling Troy Baker buddy boy a whole bunch of times. My number 4, which the scene we didn't really talk about that much, was Ashley Johnson's performance. I thought was actually excellent, which we didn't really talk on, as Ellie's mom, and the whole giving birth of the baby while fighting infected, and then the whole giving away the baby and just like the sacrifice she made, I thought was really a great scene, and I thought she did an excellent job. Number 3
on that scene too, I don't think in the game there's ever an explanation for how Ellie is able to be infected and not turn.
No,
That's kind of an interesting explanation.
Not to go too far down the road, I don't get it, and I still don't understand why she has to die to use her her blood or DNA as a investigative measure. It seems like you wouldn't want her to die. You'd want to keep using it over and over again.
Total tangent. I think they actually explained it better in the show than in the game. So they explained that the cordyceps or whatever infect the brain. So I think the idea was that they had to basically chop out a huge chunk of her brain, or dig really deep in there to get to the root of the stuff that they could brew more of, or whatever you would call it.
I agree. The show did a better job than the game, but it's still, I'm not buying it in either.
you'd think you'd be able to take like a tiny biopsy and then
Yeah.
grow something from that. But
There's lots of cells in one little thing. We can figure things out. Like, let's get real here.
That scene with Ashley Johnson. I mean, I can't think of a more inconvenient thing to do while you're killing a zombie than to push out a baby.
Well, I mean, the upside is like you're not really feeling the pain of pushing out the baby while you're doing it. So like all of a sudden the baby's on the ground. You're like, hey, that was kind of worth it, I guess. Not because she got bit though, obviously. But my number 3 was Bill's sick compound. I just love how he set this whole place up, and like the scene where he's like in the basement on the video cameras, and then he's basically like, I don't think so, buds. Like, you're not taking me. Like, that was awesome. Number 2 was the Henry's death scene. I thought that was pretty powerful. Probably because I had completely forgot that was in the game, but I thought that was a pretty powerful scene. And number 1, Game Junk, you got to do it. Mortal Kombat 2 in the mall, obviously, with the mall reveal in general. That's my number 1.
My top 5. My number 5 would be the opening credits music and the music choices in general throughout the show. Number 4, the awful CGI giant zombie mushroom monster, which made absolutely no sense to me. Number 3, Marlon and Florence scene. Number 2, giraffes. And number 1, like the very end of the series, Joel lying right to Ellie's fucking face made me laugh so hard that's how they ended the series. I loved it. Frank?
Number 5, the intro with Sarah, the daughter, and her death. I still think that's really well done and a great start for the show and the game. Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey. Bella Ramsey definitely grew on me through the course of the show. So I liked the main duo. Number 3, reimagining the Sam and Henry story and adding to it and creating the circumstances. I thought it was the best episode by far. Number 2, Real Giraffe. Number 1,
what?
The music.
The giraffe was not number 1.
No, the music is better than the giraffe.
Unbelievable. I would have put money on giraffe number 1 for you.
Sean?
Shocking. My number 5, Pedro and Bella. Number 4, The Mall.
Just Pedro and Bella?
Yeah, I mean, Frank already said it. I mean, I think they're great lead actors and great chemistry. Number 4, The Mall. I mean, it's a cool broken down mall, but there's just something about exploring a mall that's awesome. Number 3, the music. Number 2, the best episode of TV of all time, episode 3. And number 1, as much as I say I like the quiet moments, I gotta admit the horde attack was kind of the peak of the show for me. That whole episode really, but somehow I think by not having zombies in it that much, when you do have them there, it makes it that much better.
One thing, did you guys? I saw some people complaining about all of the swearing that Ellie does. Did you guys find it over the top or like a good amount or too little? How did you guys feel about the swearing? Because I personally thought it was fine. And I had heard people saying that she swears all the time. And I expected it to be like constant. I think it was from you, Frank, that told me. And I found it a fine amount personally.
I didn't have any issues with it. Frank, what'd you think? Yes, excessive. You were fine with it?
No, it was excessive.
Oh, excessive.
Yeah, I thought the first couple episodes it was a bit too much, but then, like I said, like I played when I went back and played the Left Behind DLC. I was like, well, she actually swears quite a bit in the game, so it's kind of accurate. Whether it's obnoxious or not, it's accurate. So,
well, Frank, you need to spend some time around some of the kids that hang around in Jackson Square. You hear a lot of
that's kind of
horrible language.
I understand a perspective that like that's how people talk. I swear, but when I watch movies and TV, I don't like myself. I don't want to see myself reflected in these shows. Like I want my characters to articulate themselves better than I.
Fair enough. All right. I think we did it. I think we covered the show. We talked a lot about the episodes, compared it to the game, and I think we did the job. The union of the two podcasts was a success. So what's next for? Well, if you're listening to this on the TV Junk feed, you can go watch this on the Game Junk YouTube if you want to look at our stupid faces and listen to the podcast again. You can absolutely go do that. But Sean, what's next for Film Junk?
For Film Junk, we are reviewing 65, starring Adam Driver, and then we'll be reviewing John Wick the week after that.
I have no idea what 65 is.
Adam Driver fights dinosaurs, basically.
Pretty much The Last of Us in 65 million years.
Very similar.
Oh, fair enough. So a time travel movie, I'm assuming?
Not really.
No?
Takes place during the time of dinosaurs, but
It's
Okay.
someone from another planet who lands on Earth.
Oh, I see. Okay. And then so other than this episode on Game Junk, what's the next one you guys are going to be doing? Don't know yet?
we don't know. I mean,
Shit.
maybe talking about the Resident Evil 4 remake, I would think.
Oh yeah.
Can you do a retrospective episode on Double Dragon?
I'd consider it.
You definitely. All right, Sean, where can people find you on social media?
Filmjunk.com, Filmjunk on Twitter. That's pretty much it.
Andrew, what about you? Do you want people to find you?
Sure, they can find me. Frank tells them where I can be found anyways every show. So I'm My Angry Commute on Twitter, and also Equilibrium Sys is my company Twitter.
Nice. Follow this podcast, TV Junk Podcast. Follow Ball Junk Podcast. Follow me, Gasman Lives on Twitter. Frank, still not on social media?
Correct.
All right. Next episode, we'll be doing Yellow Jackets. We'll probably get around to recording that sometime in the next couple of weeks. We'll get season 1 up while people are enjoying season 2. And then we'll see after that. Probably we'll be doing The Mandalorian. That'll be that's a few episodes in now, and it'll be our next Star Wars episode of TV Junk. So thanks for listening.